10 years, my guest on today's big interview regarded this place, the Royal National Theatre on the South Bank in London, as his home. From 1987, Sir Richard Eyre was artistic director here, and under his stewardship, the National produced a raft of memorable classics, from extraordinary Shakespearean performances to collaborations with writers like David Hare. But theatre is only one string to Eyre's eclectic creative bow. He's also a noted film director, giving us acclaimed titles like Iris and, most recently, Notes on a Scandal. And if that wasn't enough, he's turned his hand to musicals like Guys and Dolls, and currently a highly successful revival of Mary Poppins. As a member of the liberal arts establishment, Eyre has been a tireless campaigner for education. He holds a number of honorary university posts. He's patron of a range of theatre and education projects based in the community. And he's called for the arts to be at the heart of the national curriculum. So far, so expected. What is perhaps unexpected is that Eyre holds trenchant views on what art is, how it should be used, and why it should be taught. Today, the National Theatre runs a massive educational programme. Workshops, a youth theatre competition, school visits, online lesson plans for teachers.
Good afternoon.
But surprisingly, the idea that doing art is something open to us all may not entirely meet with Richard Eyre's approval.
Who are you and what do you know?
I am and I know
A fool who knows he is a fool is not so much of a fool.
In a recent lecture at the Royal Society of Arts, Eyre drew a sharp distinction between art with a capital A and popular entertainment. Art, he says, has a higher purpose, to explain the world, not merely to please or appease fashion. Like science, art has to give form and meaning to what otherwise would be formless and meaningless. So is he saying that somehow art is beyond common reach? Is he, as it were, something of an elitist who believes that education should be more about appreciating art than doing it? You were brought up in a traditional upper middle class background, rural background. It was very far from being an, as it were, arty-farty world.
It was almost free, well, it was wholly free of the arts. I grew up in the middle of Dorset in the 50s, and it was conspicuous for the total lack of art galleries, theatres, concert halls. And my parents, it's not wholly unfair to characterise them as Philistines. My father was quite belligerently Philistine. He used to say, in order to annoy me, he'd say, Shakespeare, Shakespeare's balls. And I used to feel, as did my sister, that I was some form of changeling, because I suppose in reaction to my father's belligerence about the arts and my mother's apparent indifference to the arts, my sister and I nurtured a kind of a passionate identification with all forms of the art.
So it wasn't only that there wasn't no tradition of books and arts at home. There was a real hostility, a fear of the arts, or what?
I think it was a fear. A fear and ignorance.
Go around the world, I won't use the four-letter word, and F your way around the world, and that's how you should learn about life.
I remember Neil Kinnock's boast, and it was a rather touching boast that he was the first in his family for 1,000 years to go to university. Well, that's a boast that I could share with Neil Kinnock. There was no history in my family of further education. And so whenever I hear people competitively talking, working class people talking in that the almost parody of the Monty Python sketch about their upbringings, I think, well, in terms of art and literature, I had a wholly deprived background.
It's quite a thing. You were sent away to boarding school at the age of 7.
I was sent away at 7.
And then you stayed in boarding school for the rest of your
until I was
till you were expelled.
Uncomfortably ejected from boarding school.
Is the reason known?
It's ignoble. It was just being a malcontent and essentially being gratuitously rude to, actually I see now, perfectly reasonable people, and it was unfair to unload my unhappiness on them.
It's very interesting because, in parenthesis, you could have been, had you been at a state school, one of those children who end up being chucked out of school and falling onto a scrap heap. But that didn't happen to you, not least because you did at school, in defiance or as a changeling, discover books and the arts to a degree.
As a much, much younger child, I was alerted to the power of poetry by an English teacher when I was maybe 12, who adored reading aloud. And he would read, there's a wonderful narrative poem, long narrative poem by Matthew Arnold called Balder Dead, which is about the Norse gods. And he read this, it must have taken, I think, probably 3 or 4 50-minute periods, and he loved the sound of his own voice, but he was magnificent. He'd also been in the war, and he'd lost a leg at D-Day, so he used to bang his tin leg as a percussive effect.
And you children in a 50-minute class being read an epic poem, concentrated and didn't shuffle, talk to each other. You actually found yourself listening to it?
No,
because on the face of it, given today's educational culture, it would be thought, I think, bizarre that you could focus for that long.
It was wasteful. You could say it was wasteful of time, but actually it's something that I've valued and treasured ever since. But I think we had a very, very different sense of discipline and attention, and I think also the whole, educational thinking hadn't been subverted by, I think, a misconception of children's ability to concentrate.
We may come back to a bit of that in a moment. You attracted the attention, at least, of one of your English teachers who wrote a play so that you could star in. So you were quite a little thespian.
Yes, I was. You see, most actors, genuine actors, and this is one of the reasons I became a professional actor, but I wasn't a good one, because my instinct was for self-display. It was a kind of way of demanding love, demanding approbation, which is at the heart of really any artistic enterprise, is that you do something in order to be acknowledged.
But what's the difference between that being a creative drive and having a sort of meretricious urge for applause?
Well, in some cases, the difference is very narrow. I mean, that begs the question of what is any artistic enterprise. I would say the heart of it are two things. One is meaning, and the other is skill. That it's that instinct for, if you like, for self-display and the demand for approbation is mediated through exceptional skill and exceptional desire to make sense of the world.
That creative urge, which is what I suppose we're talking about, is that a compulsion? Is it something that is born in you? You have it or you don't have it?
I think it's absolutely, it's a gift. And this is, it's monstrously unfair, and most people are in some way who want to be artists are in some way furious because they've been disenfranchised, they've been, you know, hurled out of paradise, and they can only rail against you know, higher being for the fact that they haven't been given extraordinary gifts. And this is true of people who aspire to sports as well as art.
And by definition, because it's an extraordinary gift, if that is how it should be understood, it's a very small number of people proportionate to society as a whole who have the gift.
It's true, but all society has the potential to enjoy that gift. And also, I don't believe that there is such a thing as a truly ungifted child. That's, say, not necessarily the gift for expression or the gift for, you know, of sporting expertise or expertise in any area, but simply the gift for exploiting their individual idiosyncratic virtues.
Let's work our way towards the implication of that for education by way of asking a very basic question. You have creative talent. What is art? What distinguishes art from other activities, from sport, from making money, from being a tremendously good, caring person? What makes art art as opposed to anything else?
Art is a means of making sense of the world. It's putting together disparate elements of the world in a way that allows you to understand more of the world. You see, the most difficult thing we have as human beings is to get inside the mind of anybody else. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but the one Christian edict which I embrace and find extraordinarily difficult is love thy neighbour. And love thy neighbour, the implication of that is you have to understand the alien, the otherness of everybody around you. And that means the perception, what you hear, what you see, what you think, and what you feel. And that's what art enables us to do. The gift of art is to give us empathy, to understand another person's way of looking and seeing and understanding the world.
Does that mean that entertainment, insofar as an artist gives entertainment or pleasure, is a byproduct?
I think it's impossible to produce great art that is without the pleasure principle, that is independent of the pleasure principle. Although it has to be said that there are great works of art that are quite hard work to assimilate, and I think that's entirely proper.
So what's your response to someone who says, well, you can like Bach, I love Blur, you can love Shakespeare, I love Jeffrey Archer, and what counts is what I like?
You're insane.
I'm not saying that I'm saying it for myself.
I know what I like argument.
Yeah.
Well, up to a point, it's fine. You respect people's differences. But I would go back to what is the ambition of the piece of work? Is it to enlarge your understanding of the world, of humanity, of society?
Let's now put that process and the talent, the genius that is required to make it happen into the context of education. While you were at the National, you developed the education programme. It wasn't just as it sometimes has been for artistic directors, well, it's a box we have to tick because we're using public funds, so we have to do education. Please do you mind, Mr. Director, Mr. Actor, Mrs. Actor, going out into the community. It genuinely wasn't that for you?
No, it's genuinely not. I think that, and I feel wholly frustrated at my inability to persuade anybody in government of this. And I did, if it doesn't sound preposterously vain, I attempted to to convince the Prime Minister of this, who summoned us on 2 occasions, the then leaders of the arts world, to say what we thought was the most important contribution that government could make to the health of the arts. And I pitch for, if you believe that subsidy to the arts is important, and the Prime Minister said he thought, yes, they should put it the core of the government script, the arts. If you believe that, if you believe in the necessity of subsidy to the arts in order to keep the ecology alive, the quid pro quo for that is that you must believe in education in the arts. I mean, that simply seems to me an inseparable piece of logic. If you believe in education, then you have to do something to dissolve the state that I would express as strongly as an apartheid that exists in this country between people who feel that the arts are accessible to them and for their benefit, and people who feel utterly excluded and disenfranchised.
So how do you, is education in the arts designed to do? To open the door?
To open the door. I mean, after all, and time after time after time, we see educationalists say that there seems to be a point at which education changes and children who, at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, are, their imaginations and their thinking processes are very alert and unconventional. We all know that from our own experience of children, and somehow then the drawbridge, the portcullis comes down.
Aren't we slightly talking about 2 things here? Unless I've misunderstood. One is the opening the door, if you like, and the eyes, so that people can appreciate, young people can appreciate what it is about art that makes it special, the creative arts, that makes it accessible. The other is, maybe they run together, the other is nurturing and developing that individual genius that all people, to different degrees, I think you're saying,
I think
have.
you're talking about the same thing, you see. And I think the one aids the other. And I can see that you could argue that the talking about introducing arts education at an early age is a self-interested propaganda from the point of view of people saying, oh, you're looking after the future audiences. It's not so much that as saying there is this enormous wealth. It's like a sort of natural mineral wealth of culture that is part of our inheritance. And I want these people to be, I want everybody to be able to mine that area of mineral wealth.
So you want to be able to do it. How, for instance, in the programs that you developed, and I know that you yourself went to events always, went to schools always, you really participated. How do you make it happen? It's easy enough to say it's a great idea.
Well, it would be, for instance, going to, actually this would be at a secondary level, doing, let's say, one program I saw was doing The Tempest among a group of about 40 children within a school, and then the whole school seeing the performance, but the performance being something that involved all 40 of those people, and a quite difficult play and a quite difficult text, and them taking ownership of this. And you could see that they had discovered something, that the joy not simply of participating, but actually their minds being open to the possibilities of language and metaphor and image and ideas, and communicating this, because it was the children in the school who were doing it, to the rest of the school. And you would look round and there were very, very few people who were cynical and indifferent. And it just gives you a sense of the power, the power of persuasiveness of art, but also the potential if, you know, you could spread out that kind of initiative throughout schools.
If being a great actor is like being a great footballer to this extent that you have to be very, very good,
Yes.
A lot of those people in that school, those 40, maybe none of them, certainly only a tiny handful of them, will be equipped to go on to become actors or directors. What do you hope that they will get from it, from that excitement of performance? What do you think they can get from it that would make you say everyone ought to be doing this at school?
Well, for a start, it engages, you know, like the Heineken ad. I mean, it simply
reaches parts
that, you know, other areas of the curriculum don't reach. Then it wakes them up to the potential of art actually to see the world differently. And it also, as with all school sport, it makes them see what it is about really great actors that they can't do because they've had the experience of trying to do it. They've found out it's enormously difficult, and it means they appreciate it when it's done really well.
In order to fully appreciate it, to fully have the sense of wonder, engagement, exploration that you're talking about, those young people can't just get that from performing it at a what would be professionally, as it were, a very primitive level. For it to be counted as success, if I've got you, they actually have to want to go and discover more and hear more, learn more.
I would say so. I mean, the only argument for great art is art itself. No amount of propaganda and evangelizing and proselytizing is going to make somebody appreciate something unless they see it. Unless they see it, they look at a painting and think, that speaks to me, and I'm going to try and understand why it speaks to me.
I don't want to be overly simplistic about it, but there's a kind of school of thought which says that the purpose of art in school, and particularly the creative art, the performing arts, is it's a tool to help children engage with subjects through being able to express themselves, and that in that sense that it has a utilitarian purpose distinct from whether or not they should love high art.
I think that's a perfectly virtuous way of looking at it, that it's an educational tool. I just think it would say, you know, it's worth remembering it's not only an educational tool. And I think that's the danger, that you think that art is something that in some way you can be tested in about, you know, the facts, rather than it being something that releases feelings.
So it'd be quite difficult to achieve in the current environment your objective of having art put at the core of the school curriculum, because it's not testable.
I think that's the problem, is that art by definition isn't quantifiable. The moment you're dealing with people's feelings, there are extraordinary gradation of feeling and perception. That's a difficulty, that it can't and I think shouldn't be subject to examination. But I can't believe that there aren't ways of constructing a curriculum that every activity of the curriculum is not something subject to examination.
I can imagine some teachers saying, yeah, he's obviously, you know, terrific guy, made movies, responsible for terrific performances at National Theatre, but he's not really in the real world. He's basically an elitist, and he's snobbish about art. He doesn't like what my kids like. Respond to that.
It doesn't seem to me that a love of art, of, if you like, high art, which is, I think, repellently sort of pejorative expression, high art and popular culture. Where's the problem liking both of them? But I would simply say I'm not going to force anybody to love Bach, but I would love to explain to somebody why this is so special and why most popular music just simply is a tenth of as ambitious and a tenth as interesting. But a lot of people don't have the space in their lives for more than popular art being something that actually assuages in the short term, lives of quiet misery.
Finally then, head teacher says to you, Richard, I've got a limited resources, limited budget, limited time. If I'm going to bring theatre and other arts to the fore in my school, I'm going to have to take money away from other areas. You give me a soundbite as to why I should do it when I'm trying to sell it to my governors.
Because it'll make all other areas of your school curriculum, it'll enrich all other areas of your curriculum. It'll make your life easier.
Sir Richard Eyre, thanks.